Hey, Wangechi, how are ya?
Hi, I'm good. You?
Good, good. Great to see you joining us this morning. Where are you joining us from today?
I'm in Nyeri in Kenya, a place called Nyeri.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
Well, you are joining us. You are kicking off day 3 of the Global Biodiversity Festival. It's been an absolutely wild weekend, and we're so excited to have you with us to kick off another day.
Yeah, I'm also excited to be part of this great festival.
All right, so I'm going to give you a nice little introduction, and then I'm going to let you take over for a bit and share some of the incredible work you're doing. So we are so lucky to have Wangechi Kiongo joining us today. She is a young environmental scientist based in Kenya, engaged in research and community outreach in matters of environmental conservation. She's also a National Geographic Explorer. She's the co-founder of the Save Lake Turkana Movement, a community-based organization which works to protect the world's largest desert lake, which is Lake Turkana in Kenya, listed by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site in danger. So Wangechi, we are very excited to get to know you a little bit better and learn about some of your work and maybe some of the biodiversity in the place where you get to live and work.
Thank you, Joe. Sorry. So, basically, mainly I work with communities. And the 3 main reasons for me why I feel passionate about working with communities in matters regarding conservation, biodiversity conservation, is I believe they are the experts on Indigenous knowledge in matters conservation. I mean, we bring in the science and the technical part of it, but Indigenous knowledge is also very key in understanding what's really happening with biodiversity and ecosystems at large. And then these communities are the most affected by developments, both internally and externally, as I'll mention a bit later. And it gives them a sense of ownership and belonging. For example, where I work, I'm not part of that particular community. So working with people from that particular community makes them feel a sense of ownership, such that they don't feel like I'm going in there to take advantage of their space and their ecosystem as well. So I work around Turkana, which is in northern Kenya, and you can see the continuous blue shaded area is the lake, and it borders Ethiopia, Sudan, and Uganda, and that's the world's largest permanent desert lake, and recently listed as UNESCO's World Heritage Site in danger. I'll mention why in a bit. So the red stars indicate the villages, the 7 villages where I work, and mostly I work around the Ferguson's Gulf with and because the reason I work around the Ferguson's Gulf is because it has the highest fish productivity. So we work with, and Kalokol, I don't know if you can see on your far left, Kalokol town is the main fishing town in Turkana. So that's why we focus with communities that are located around that region. So why Lake Turkana? I won't go much into the archaeology. I'm not an archaeologist, but it is the cradle of mankind and thought to the site of origin of modern day humans. It also has a high conservation importance. It holds the world's largest remaining population of the Nile crocodile. It is also a very important bird area and supports over 300 species, bird species, and also fish species, of which 11 of these are endemic. My favorite of the reasons is because it is a lifeline for local communities, for local livelihood. And many of the local communities in this area depend on fisheries to supplement other alternative livelihood sources such as pastoralism. And over 300,000 of the people depend on this lake for survival. Also, it cautions the communities against extreme climate events, for example, prolonged drought. So I call it sort of an umbilical cord for this community because it's like the main source of life and income and survival for them. So the main threat facing this lake that drove UNESCO to listing it as a World Heritage Site in danger is there are some developments happening in Ethiopia, and they are building a series of dams, which will be used to generate electricity and hydropower, hydropower, and also irrigation schemes for cotton and sugarcane. So why this is a problem to Lake Turkana is that 90% of the water that gets into this lake comes from the Omo River in Ethiopia. The other 10% comes from two other rivers, Takwel and Kerio in Kenya. So it is predicted that with time, if water continues being withdrawn from river, water from Lake Turkana will gradually decrease up to 20 meters, whereby the current level is 30 meters, which shows it's above 50% of the water that exists in the lake. So we did research just to understand how much dependency there is on the lake for the communities around this area. And over 50% of the people there depend on the lake and depend on fishing. So we also asked if they had any alternative source of livelihood, just in case the lake was to shrink or disappear. And most of them said they would relocate because they've never thought of the lake shrinking or disappearing because it's been there, they've grown up, people have found it there. So they've never imagined anything like that could happen. We also tried to understand the level of awareness around this community in regard to the developments ongoing and the threats the lake faces. And you can see over 60% have no idea what is going on. Over 60% have no idea their livelihoods are in danger. So we are trying to create awareness. We recently did a documentary called Water to Dust. You can check it out on YouTube. And it's we are just trying to voice out the plights of the community members, just showing how much this lake, what this lake means to them, what they benefit from, and also trying to do workshops, community sensitization, just to make them aware that this is what the situation looks like, and this is what the lake might end up looking like. I don't know if anyone has come across the RLC scenario where they did the same, build irrigation schemes, and then eventually the lake split into two. So this is sort of where we are heading. So we are working with communities to try and reduce the pressure on the lake from their side. Since we can't do it in Ethiopia, we do it from our side in Kenya. We're also doing trainings on alternative livelihoods. These are some of the women we work with who are engaged in basketry, bead making, weaving, which is totally unrelated to the lake. So why we are encouraging alternative sources of livelihoods is because, one, we are protecting the communities just in case the worst comes to us, and also protecting the lake from the pressure the whole community is inserting on the lake, because now there is increased fishing, because the fish catches are less. So we are trying to support and capacity build the communities on alternative livelihood sources. We're also doing advocacy, just trying to do research, as I've mentioned down here, research, advocacy, trying to lobby the government to try and convince the other Ethiopian government to at least, if not stop the dams, maybe reduce the size of the dams or regulate the flows of the dams, reduce the size of irrigation schemes, or just come up with strategies that will favor and consider the communities that depend on this lake. So many ask, what is the future of the lake? And honestly, I am as worried as the community members. Everyone is as worried as they are, because currently, as we are speaking, we are still in the process of collecting long-term data on how much water is reducing. But as you can see, this is last year, and this is the amount of fish they are catching. So the community has now resorted to catching undergrown fish that is not fully grown. That means the fish are not coming to maturity. There is resource conflict. fish has definitely drastically reduced. So I'm sure by the time maybe we are collecting data for 2-3 years, who knows, maybe there'll probably be no fish by then. How can you take part in our initiative and our work? You can engage communities in biodiversity conservation where you work. You can also learn more about our work on social media platforms via Save Lake Turkana Movement all across. You can share your expertise. You can come in as advisors to share on the science part, community work. You can also fund, of course, for any work, there has to be funding. And then volunteer, you can volunteer with us to work around this and come up with ways we can help the community as well as try to protect this lake. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Great. Wangechi, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I'm going to get you to, oh, I think you're ahead of the game. I'll get you to stop that screen share and come back to us.
Okay.
There you are, nice and front and center. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing a really unique region of the world. I'd love if you could take just a minute and tell us a little bit about some of the biodiversity that can be found in the area.
So around this area, there is a wide range of biodiversity, ranging from wildlife. There are the lions. I just mentioned there's the largest population of the Nile crocodile. The fish there are over 50 species and endemic as well. The birds as well, I mentioned over 350, and also migratory birds as well. So it's a wide range of bird, and also the main tree species you'll find around there is the doom palm tree, which I forgot to mention. This community uses this tree. It's like it supports minus the lake. This tree, I believe this tree would somehow support this community because it has seeds that they use as fodder. They use the leaves as fodder. They use this seed as renewable energy. When they have no food, they use the seed as food. So the rich biodiversity around Turkana supports the community in such a great way.
All right. And so one thing we've been noticing when we've been having these connections, talking to different conservation organizations, is that the community really gets it. They understand that biodiversity is really important to their way of life, their future survival. Are you finding that in the community as well, that they value biodiversity and they know that they need to protect it?
Yes, definitely. And that's a very important question because, as I'd mentioned Indigenous knowledge. And working with communities with time, I've come to learn that the Indigenous knowledge is very, very important in conserving biodiversity, because for them, sometimes they're not even aware that they are doing it because it's important to conserve biodiversity. But based on the knowledge that is passed on to them, you find that they do things that conserve the environment and biodiversity automatically. For us, it's something maybe we've come to learn through science, there's climate change and all that, but for them, their normal practices, daily practices, conserves biodiversity automatically.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is such a key piece to protecting biodiversity is Indigenous knowledge, engaging the community, learning about practices that they've used for thousands of years in some cases, and working those into the conservation plan. So very cool.
Yeah.
Wangechi, awesome. Okay, so let's continue on with a few more questions here. So yeah, sure. The first one is, can you tell us a little bit about the story behind the founding of your organization?
So back in 2016, around 2016, I was doing my university internship with International Rivers, a US-based organization. And they gave me an assignment around this region, around Lake Turkana. So it was hard for me because I've come from a totally different environment. I've come from the central part of Kenya, which is very green. There's a lot of rainfall, hardly face drought and such issues. So the first few days were a bit rough for me, but getting to learn and understand how connected these communities are to the lake and their surrounding, the ecosystem, the biodiversity around them, drove me and pushed me to, and my colleagues as well, those who we were working with, and some youth community members from this place, decided to form this organization so that when I left my internship with International Rivers, the project did not end there. So it was so that we were able to continue with the work, continue helping communities in conservation, because it would be sad for me, because we were able to build relationships with them and the environment and the lake within such a short time. So I felt like it would be unfair for me to just go there for a couple of weeks, and then when I'm done with the project and the research, just say goodbye to the community and leave them to deal with their own issues. So that was one of the main inspirations that drove us to form the Save Lake Turkana Movement initiative.
All right, excellent. And can you tell us about maybe some challenges that you faced along the way, maybe your biggest challenge?
So one of our biggest challenge is not being from that area. So communities in Kenya, most of the communities, marginalized communities, are very protective of their areas and their region. So it was hard to gain their trust, but eventually one of the principles of community work is building trust. And eventually we were able to work with the make the project sort of community driven, such that we are there as only advisors and not there to tell them what to do. So I think that's a challenge we were able to overcome, because we're able to engage the local community members to probably sort of run the project themselves. And also it's sort of far from where we are based, and infrastructure, it's so hard to get there. So like probably at this time where there is COVID, I'm worried like when the next time I'll be able to visit this place will be. So those are just some of the main challenges that we are facing and we've been facing, but hopefully things will run smoothly and we'll be able to overcome.
All right, excellent. So we talked about a challenge. Now, how about we talk a little bit about a success? What's something you can point to that you know, makes you feel good and you know, helps you be excited to continue the work you're doing?
I think one of the main motivations or successes is the support we've given to especially the women groups around there. So for most marginalized communities, women are not as empowered as the men. So being able to help and train these women in basketry and improving their products and being able to see them get a source of livelihood and income has been such a huge motivation for us, and it gives us the zeal to continue with what we are doing so that we are able to support more and more people. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what do you see in the area around the lake? Would you say biodiversity levels are improving? Are they kind of holding steady, or is there still a lot of work to be done?
Honestly, I think there's a lot of work to be done, because with the reducing resources due to, for example, just as I've shown the fish, you've seen the level, the sizes of fish they are now catching, which means the fish as well is also in danger. I think with the reduced and scarcity of resources around this region, the community is now forced to, what is it called? Is it overexploit, if I may say? So they are overexploiting the resources around them. So I guess we really need to do more sensitization. And that's why I'm mainly focusing on also trying to advise and teach them on alternatives, so that they don't have to like entirely depend on harnessing things from the ecosystem. Yeah.
All right, great stuff. And then what about kids in the area? Are you doing things to engage the youth?
Yes, in fact, I should have inserted a photo in my presentation. So what we are doing with kids is basically just teaching them on environmental conservation. We've been doing tree planting with them, and the program has really been going well. So what we do is we plant trees with the school kids, and each kid owns a tree. Like they grow, like I say they grow with the tree because they have ownership of these trees. So mainly what we are doing is just environmental mentor. I call it environmental mentorship, just mentoring the kids on environmental conservation so that at least they're able to pass it on to the younger kids who come after them. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Well, I think we have time to squeeze in maybe one or two more questions before we let you go, but it's been great to have you joining us today. Great to have you help us kick off the day. And I think I would like to collect a little bit of advice from you. What advice would you give for someone maybe in the situation you were a few years ago, coming to a new area and wanting to engage people in conservation?
I think first and foremost is build trust with the people around the area. First, speak to the leaders. For example, where I work, I first speak with like the chief, the local leaders. First, speak with the local leaders because they are the key to the other community members. When you get there, go ahead, pick community members to work with you. Don't do it with like your whole team from somewhere else and come and colonize their area. Just work with community members from that place. That way they'll feel like this thing is not only for you, only for your own benefit, but also for the benefit of the community members. So build trust with them, work with them, engage them, and make sure everything you do, you engage them and involve them. That way it will be so easy for you. Yeah.
All right. That is incredible advice. I couldn't agree more. What you've done is incredible, and you're doing it the right way. So thanks for sharing that with us today. And in fact, I think we should end off with a question about your inspiration. When was there a time that biodiversity really impacted you, or you saw something in nature that made you realize this is my future? I want to protect our wild places. I want to protect our biodiversity.
The same answer I'd given before. When I was interning and went to work with the communities around Lake Turkana, I mean, if you visit the lake, you'll understand more, but the beauty and the biodiversity around that place is something to fall in love with. So I think that is mainly my driver and my motivation to biodiversity conservation. So I'd say the same, Lake Turkana, always.
Yeah. All right. Well, sounds like a place I have to dive a little bit deeper into and research a little bit more. It sounds like an amazing place. And you mentioned lions. Have you ever seen some of the lions in the wild?
Unfortunately, not in Turkana, but somewhere else. Yes.
Yeah. And what's that like? Probably pretty incredible to see them.
Yes, very incredible. Like you're tempted to go near them, but of course, you just can't. But it's incredible.
All right. Sounds like it. I mean, you look at the pictures of the cubs and you want to just kind of give them a scratch, but that's probably very bad advice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Wangechi, thank you so much. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for kicking off the festival. And I hope you can tune in a little bit throughout the day, because we have so many great speakers. You probably know some of them through your connections with National Geographic. Why don't actually, before we wrap up, because we do have another few seconds, how did that come about? How did your involvement with Nat Geo come to be?
So I applied for a grant in support of this work. And when they accepted, they've been supporting me like throughout trainings, National Geographic trainings in photography, data collection, leadership. So I'm also part of an early career leadership program, 2019-2020. And that's just part of the support National Geographic has given. So it came about, it started with the grant support, and then throughout they've been working with me in my work, giving advice, giving support, giving trainings and all that. Yeah. So I'd encourage anyone who is interested or doing any sort of research or community work, environmental protection, wildlife protection, to check out, not to check out National Geographic grants. And
yeah, absolutely. I get that question all the time. How do you get involved with National Geographic? And it really is that simple. Apply for the grant, be passionate about your project the way that you are, and that'll come across in the application, and who knows. So absolutely. All right, Wangechi, thank you so much
also,
for
just one second. I just realized my name on this meeting is John Kiongo. I'm not John.
No, don't worry. That only shows up. That only shows up to you and me. They don't see that on YouTube. So you're in the clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. Starting off day 3 of what's going to be a busy day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, thank you too.
Okay. We'll see ya.
Bye.